Captain Marcus Rodriguez stood on the bridge of the U.S. Defiance, his weathered hands gripping the command rail as he stared at the massive alien vessel hovering above Earth's atmosphere. The ship was a behemoth of dark metal and pulsing energy, easily 3 times the size of humanity's largest space station. It hung there like a predator studying its prey, casting an ominous shadow across the blue marble below. 3 days had passed since the Zephyrians made first contact, and their message had been devastatingly clear: submit to their authority or face complete extermination. No negotiations, no diplomatic discussions, no chance for peaceful coexistence. Just brutal ultimatum delivered with the casual arrogance of a species that had conquered countless worlds. "Sir," Lieutenant Commander Jessica Williams called from the communications station, her voice tight with tension, "we're receiving another transmission from the alien flagship." "Same frequency as before." Rodriguez nodded grimly. The aliens had been broadcasting their demands on repeat, ensuring that every human on Earth heard their fate. The psychological warfare was as effective as it was terrifying. The holographic display flickered to life in the center of the bridge, revealing the nightmarish insectoid form of High Commander Vexstar. His 4 chitinous arms gestured dismissively while his compound eyes glittered with malevolent intelligence. When he spoke, the universal translator rendered his words in perfect, condescending English. "Primitive humans," the alien's voice buzzed with barely contained contempt, "your crude projectile weapons and chemical explosives are laughably obsolete. We have witnessed your pathetic conflicts through our observation probes for decades. Your bullets and missiles are mere curiosities compared to our plasma cannons and quantum disruptors." Rodriguez felt his jaw clench involuntarily. The Zephyrians had been watching Earth like scientists observing laboratory animals, cataloging human military capabilities with clinical detachment. They'd seen every war, every weapon test, every military parade. They'd analyzed humanity's nuclear arsenal, studied the tactics of Earth's greatest generals, and concluded that humans were nothing more than a primitive species playing with sticks and stones. "Your largest thermonuclear weapons produce explosions equivalent to 50 megatons, Vexstar continued, his mandibles clicking in what might have been laughter. "Our weakest defensive screens can absorb 10 times that energy without strain. Your fastest missiles travel at mere chemical propulsion speeds. Our interceptors move at significant fractions of light speed." The alien commander leaned forward, his multiple eyes focusing on the camera with predatory intensity. "We offer you one final chance, humans. Surrender now, and we will allow your species to serve as laborers in our expanding empire. Your world will be strip-mined for resources, but your people will live as slaves. Refuse, and we will demonstrate why 1,000 worlds have fallen before the might of the Zephyrian hegemony." The transmission paused, filled with the sound of clicking mandibles and the hum of alien machinery. Then Vexstar's voice returned, colder than before. "You have 6 hours to respond. After that, we begin orbital bombardment of your major population centers. Your weapons cannot penetrate our shields. Your ships cannot match our speed. Your soldiers cannot stand against our warriors. You are insects, and we are the exterminators." The transmission ended abruptly, leaving the bridge in tense silence. Rodriguez looked around at his crew, men and women who had trained their entire lives for this moment, never truly believing it would come. They were the best humanity had to offer, veterans of countless conflicts, experts in warfare and technology. And according to the aliens, they were completely outmatched. "Orders, sir?" Williams asked, her voice steady despite the circumstances. Rodriguez smiled grimly, thinking of the classified files locked away in his personal safe. Files that detailed humanity's true capabilities, weapons that had been developed in absolute secrecy while the aliens watched their conventional military exercises. "Send a message to all Earth Defense Force ships," he commanded. "Tell them it's time to show these bugs what humans do best when we're underestimated." The Zephyrian fleet arranged itself in perfect formation above Earth's major cities, a testament to their military precision and overwhelming confidence. 12 massive dreadnoughts hung in the void like artificial moons, each vessel stretching over 5 kilometers in length. Their hulls gleamed with an otherworldly sheen, covered in energy shields that shimmered with barely contained power. These weren't just ships, they were monuments to Zephyrian technological supremacy designed to inspire fear and despair in any species foolish enough to resist. High Commander Vexstar stood in the command center of his flagship, the Dominion's Edge, his 4 arms clasped behind his back as he surveyed the pathetic human response. Through the massive viewport, he could see the primitive human fleet approaching, 60 vessels that looked like children's toys compared to his mighty dreadnoughts. Their hulls were constructed from simple metal alloys, their weapons systems laughably outdated, their entire technological base centuries behind Zephyrian standards. Tactical analysis complete. High Commander reported Subcommander Krelix, his mandibles clicking with barely suppressed amusement. The human vessels are armed with kinetic projectiles, chemical warheads, and primitive directed energy weapons. Their power output is approximately 1,000th of our weakest destroyer. Vexthar's compound eyes examined the holographic display with professional interest. The human ships were arranged in what they probably considered battle formation, their weapons systems powered up and ready for combat. It was almost endearing, like watching insects prepare to fight a tsunami. And their most powerful weapon? Vexthar inquired, though he already knew the answer from decades of surveillance. Nuclear missiles, sir. Crude fusion reactions that produce approximately 50 megatons of explosive force. Their most advanced warheads appear to be mounted on intercontinental ballistic missiles with chemical propulsion systems. The bridge crew erupted in the chittering sound that passed for laughter among Zephyrians. 50 megatons, a force that could level a human city, was nothing more than a minor inconvenience to ships designed to withstand the energy output of dying stars. 50 megatons, Vexthar repeated, savoring the absurdity. Our weakest defensive screen can absorb 10 times that energy without strain. These humans are even more primitive than our initial assessments suggested. The human fleet had stopped at what they clearly considered a safe distance, nearly 1,000,000 kilometers from the Zephyrian formation. Through the long-range sensors, the aliens could observe the tiny specks of light that were human vessels, apparently preparing for what they believed would be a glorious last stand. Sir, the tactical officer reported, we're detecting energy signatures consistent with weapons charging. The humans appear to be powering up their nuclear arsenal. Vexthar gestured dismissively with two of his arms. Let them waste their ammunition. When they realize their weapons are completely useless against our shields, perhaps they'll be more willing to negotiate surrender terms. Activate defensive screens to minimal power. We wouldn't want to accidentally vaporize them all. We still need workers for the mining operations. The first wave of human missiles appeared on their long-range sensors like a swarm of angry fireflies streaming across the void. Hundreds of primitive projectiles, each one representing humanity's desperate hope for survival. The Zephyrians watched with detached scientific interest as the weapons approached, their trajectory computers calculating impact times and energy yields. Impact in 30 seconds, Krelix announced, his voice carrying the bored tone of someone watching a predictable experiment. Shall we increase defensive power to moderate levels? No, Vexthar replied, his voice dripping with arrogance. Let them see exactly how futile their efforts truly are. Record everything. This demonstration will serve as excellent propaganda for other primitive species considering resistance. The countdown continued as the human missiles closed the distance, their primitive guidance systems locked onto targets they could never hope to damage. The first nuclear warheads detonated against the Zephyrian shields in brilliant flashes of light and radiation, their explosions creating miniature suns that bloomed and died in the vacuum of space. The energy screens absorbed the tremendous force effortlessly, exactly as their calculations had predicted. Wave after wave of human missiles hammered against the alien defenses, each detonation adding to the spectacular light show that illuminated the darkness between worlds. On the bridge of the Dominion's edge, the crew watched with bored satisfaction as humanity's most powerful weapons harmlessly expended themselves against their superior technology. The display screens showed energy readings that barely registered on their defensive systems. The humans were throwing everything they had at the Zephyrian fleet, and it wasn't even enough to cause minor fluctuations in their shield generators. As expected, Vexthar commented, his voice carrying across the command center with supreme confidence. Their most powerful weapons are nothing more than elaborate fireworks. Perhaps now they'll understand the futility of. The explosion that followed defied every law of physics the Zephyrians understood. The lead human vessel, the U.S. Defiance, had fired something completely different, something that didn't appear on any of their sensor readings, didn't match any known human technology, and moved at speeds that should have been impossible for such a primitive species. The projectile struck the Zephyrian destroyer Void Ripper at 99% of light speed, carrying kinetic energy that transformed matter itself into pure destruction. The alien warship didn't just explode, it ceased to exist. In the space of a single heartbeat, 3 kilometers of the most advanced military technology in the galaxy were converted to expanding plasma and scattered atoms. The Void Ripper had been there one moment, a testament to Zephyrian engineering superiority, and then it was nothing more than a rapidly expanding cloud of superheated particles. The shockwave from the destruction rippled outward through space, its gravitational effects disrupting the tight formation of the Zephyrian fleet. Secondary explosions erupted as nearby vessels struggled to compensate for the massive energy release, their shield systems overloading from the unexpected assault. What in the name of the void was that? Krelix stammered, his compound eyes wide with disbelief as he stared at the tactical display. Where the Void Ripper had been, there was now only empty space and the fading signature of incredible destruction. Before Vexthar could respond, before his mind could process what had just happened, two more Zephyrian vessels vanished in identical bursts of annihilation. The heavy cruiser Star Render and the battleship Cosmic Dominion simply ceased to exist. Their massive hulls transformed into expanding spheres of energy that outshone nearby stars. The sensors detected nothing, no projectile signature, no energy beam, no warning of incoming fire. The ships were simply there one moment and gone the next, as if reality itself had decided they no longer deserved to exist. Evasive maneuvers. Vexthar shrieked, his composure finally cracking as the impossible became undeniable. All ships scatter formation. Maximum defensive power. What kind of weapon could I? Sir, the tactical officer interrupted, his voice shaking with terror. I'm detecting massive energy signatures from the human fleet. They're charging multiple weapon systems. Energy readings are off our scales. On the main display, the human ships were repositioning themselves in a perfect geometric formation, their hulls beginning to glow with an ominous blue-white light that seemed to bend space around them. Whatever technology they were using, it was beyond anything the Zephyrians had observed during their decades of careful surveillance. Impossible, Vexthar whispered, his forearms trembling as he watched his supposedly invincible fleet scatter like frightened insects. Our intelligence reports show they barely have functional fusion power. How can they possibly do? The second volley of relativistic kill vehicles arrived, and three more Zephyrian dreadnoughts learned that in the face of raw physics, even the most advanced shields were meaningless. Admiral Catherine Hayes stood in the command center of Luna Base, 300,000 kilometers from Earth, watching the tactical display with cold satisfaction. The massive holographic projection showed the Zephyrian formation in complete disarray, their once perfect battle lines scattered like leaves in a hurricane as they desperately tried to avoid the invisible death streaking toward them at relativistic speeds. RKV impact successful on all targets, reported Commander David Park from the weapons control station, his voice steady despite the magnitude of what they had just accomplished. 6 enemy vessels destroyed, 6 remaining. They're attempting emergency retreat to higher orbit, but their formation integrity is completely broken. Hayes nodded grimly, her fingers dancing across the command console as she coordinated humanity's hidden arsenal. The relativistic kill vehicles, humanity's most closely guarded secret for over half a century, were performing exactly as designed. Each tungsten projectile, accelerated to 99.9% of light speed by magnetic launchers hidden throughout the solar system, carried the kinetic energy of a small star compressed into a rod no larger than a telephone pole. The aliens made a fundamental and fatal error, Hayes said, addressing the assembled officers who had spent their entire careers preparing for this moment. They assumed that what they could observe was the totality of human military capability. They watched our conventional wars, analyzed our nuclear tests, cataloged our missile systems, and they thought they understood us completely. On the tactical display, the surviving Zephyrian ships were frantically trying to regroup, their energy shields blazing at maximum power in a desperate attempt to defend against weapons they couldn't even detect. It was a futile gesture. You cannot shield against pure momentum traveling at near light speed. For 53 years, Hayes continued, her voice carrying the weight of decades of preparation. Ever since our deep space monitoring stations first detected alien probe activity in the outer solar system, humanity has been preparing for this exact scenario. While the Zephyrians watched our surface military exercises and conventional conflicts, they completely missed the real weapons development happening in classified facilities hidden throughout the asteroid belt on the dark side of the moon, and in deep space installations that don't officially exist. The operations center hummed with controlled activity as technicians monitored weapon systems that had been constructed in absolute secrecy. Projects so classified that even most world leaders didn't know their true scope. Underground manufacturing facilities on Mars, automated shipyards in the Kuiper Belt, research stations disguised as mining operations, all of it invisible to alien surveillance. They never realized, Hayes said, watching as another RKV streaked toward its target, that a species paranoid enough to wage war against itself for thousands of years would be intelligent enough to keep its most devastating weapons hidden when being observed by potential extraterrestrial threats. The Zephyrians had studied human nature, but they had fundamentally misunderstood it. They saw humanity's tendency toward conflict as a sign of primitive aggression, never recognizing it as the driving force behind an arms race that had produced weapons capable of rewriting the laws of physics. "Ma'am," Park called out, monitoring the alien fleet's panicked communications. "The Zephyrians are transmitting on all frequencies. They're requesting immediate ceasefire negotiations." Hayes smiled coldly, thinking of the orbital platforms that were still charging, weapons that would make the RKVs look like firecrackers in comparison. "Too late for diplomacy," she replied. "They had their chance to leave peacefully. Now they get to learn why humans are the only known species that weaponizes theoretical mathematics." The third wave of RKVs was already in flight. High Commander Vexstar clutched the command chair with all four arms as another massive shockwave rocked the Dominion's edge, the flagship's hull groaning under stresses it was never designed to endure. Emergency klaxons wailed throughout the command center while damage reports flooded in from every deck. Half his magnificent fleet was gone, vaporized by weapons that defied every principle of physics the Zephyrian hegemony had built their empire upon. The tactical display showed a nightmare scenario: 6 of his mighty dreadnoughts reduced to expanding clouds of superheated plasma, their crews of thousands simply erased from existence in microseconds. The remaining vessels were scattered across 1,000,000 cubic kilometers of space, their perfect formation destroyed by panic and the desperate need to avoid invisible death traveling at near light speed. "Status report," Vexstar commanded, his voice cracking with strain as he struggled to maintain some semblance of authority over the chaos. "Sir," Krelix reported, his exoskeleton trembling as he read from multiple damage displays, "we're detecting new energy signatures from the human positions. Massive power buildup unlike anything in our databases. The energy readings they're impossible, sir." On the main tactical display, something that defied all logic was happening. The human fleet was repositioning yet again, but this time they weren't alone. Massive structures that had been orbiting Earth, installations the Zephyrians had dismissed as primitive industrial facilities and communication satellites, were unfolding like mechanical flowers, revealing their true and terrifying purpose. By the void, Vexter breathed, his compound eyes struggling to process what they were seeing. "Those aren't space stations. They're weapon platforms." The orbital installations were colossal, each one dwarfing even Zephyrian destroyers in size. Dozens of them ringed Earth's orbit, hidden in plain sight among legitimate civilian infrastructure. As their camouflaged hulls retracted, they revealed focusing arrays, particle accelerators, and energy collectors that made the aliens' quantum disruptors look like primitive laser pointers. "How many?" Vexstar whispered, watching in horror as more platforms continued to reveal themselves. 37 confirmed, sir, with more still deploying. Energy readings are climbing beyond our measurement capabilities. Whatever power source they're using, it's generating more energy than our entire fleet combined. The implications hit Vexstar like a physical blow. The humans hadn't just hidden a few secret weapons. They had turned their entire orbital infrastructure into the largest weapons array in known galactic history. Every communications satellite, every power collector, every seemingly innocent piece of space debris had been carefully positioned to create a defensive network that could obliterate entire fleets. "New transmission incoming from the human fleet," the communications officer reported, his voice barely audible over the emergency alarms. "Put it through," Vexstar ordered, dreading what he would hear. The holographic display showed a human female in military uniform, her expression as cold and merciless as the vacuum of space. The identification markers tagged her as Admiral Hayes, Supreme Commander of the Earth Defense Force, a position the Zephyrians had assumed was purely ceremonial. "This is Admiral Hayes of the Earth Defense Force," she began, her voice carrying the authority of someone who held the power to unmake worlds. "You came to our system expecting to find primitives armed with sticks and stones. Instead, you found a species that has spent the last 5 decades preparing for exactly this scenario. Behind her, tactical displays showed the true scope of human military preparation that spanned the entire solar system. Hidden weapons platforms throughout the asteroid belt, defensive installations on every major moon, and weapons arrays that could focus the collected energy of their star itself into beams of pure annihilation. You see, Hayes continued, we learned something very important from our own violent history. The most dangerous enemy is always the one you underestimate. And throughout human history, we have been consistently and fatally underestimated. The orbital platforms finished their charging sequence, their combined energy output reading levels that made Vexthar's mandibles click in involuntary terror. You have exactly 30 seconds to begin immediate withdrawal from Earth space, Hayes concluded, her words carrying the finality of a death sentence. After that, we demonstrate why humans don't just win wars. We end them permanently. Vexthar's pride warred with his survival instincts as the human ultimatum counted down. The Zephyrian hegemony had never retreated from battle, never shown weakness to a primitive species. But the smoking remains of half his fleet argued convincingly for discretion. Sir, Krelix whispered urgently, perhaps we should consider. No, Vexthar snarled. We are Zephyrians. We do not flee from primitives, regardless of their hidden weapons. All ships concentrate fire on the human orbital platforms. Show them the true power of. The countdown reached 0. The human orbital platforms fired simultaneously, and space itself seemed to tear apart. These weren't kinetic weapons or nuclear warheads, they were something far more terrifying. The beams that lanced out from Earth's orbit were pure converted matter, streams of energy that existed at the fundamental level of reality itself. The first beam struck the Dominion's edge directly. Vexthar had a brief moment to feel his ship's quantum shields simply cease to exist, as if they had never been there at all. Then the beam hit the hull and the laws of physics took over. Matter conversion was theoretical even to the Zephyrians, the idea that you could break the binding forces of atoms and release their energy directly. But the humans had turned theory into reality, creating weapons that didn't just destroy ships, they erased them from existence. The Dominion's edge lasted exactly 2.3 seconds before its entire mass was converted to pure energy. The explosion was visible from the outer planets, a new star that briefly outshone the sun. In the command center of the surviving Zephyrian vessels, Subcommander Krelix, now the highest-ranking officer left alive, stared at the readings in horror. The humans had just demonstrated a weapon that could unmake matter itself. Retreat, he whispered. Then, louder, all ships, immediate withdrawal. Emergency jump to hyperspace. But the humans weren't finished. 6 months later, the galactic community was still reeling from the news that had spread like wildfire across the civilized worlds. The Zephyrian hegemony, the iron-fisted conquerors of over 1,000 star systems, had been utterly annihilated by a species that most galactic civilizations had never even heard of. The word human now carried weight in diplomatic circles, spoken in hushed tones with a mixture of respect, fear, and careful consideration. Admiral Catherine Hayes stood at the podium in the United Nations Assembly Hall, addressing representatives from 17 different alien species who had made the pilgrimage to Earth seeking immediate diplomatic relations. The same civilizations that had completely ignored humanity's previous attempts at peaceful contact were now desperately eager to establish trade agreements, mutual defense pacts, and non-aggression treaties. The irony was not lost on her. The Zephyrian hegemony made a fundamental and catastrophic error in judgment, Hayes explained to the assembled delegates, her voice carrying the authority of someone who had just reshaped the balance of galactic power. They assumed that military capability could be accurately assessed by observing conventional surface conflicts. They monitored our wars, analyzed our nuclear tests, cataloged our missile deployments, and concluded they understood the full extent of human military technology. She gestured toward the massive holographic display that dominated the assembly hall, showing Earth's defensive network in all its terrifying glory. The orbital platforms, the asteroid belt launchers, the matter conversion facilities, the relativistic kill vehicle arrays, all of it now visible to the galaxy as both warning and promise. What they failed to comprehend, Hayes continued, watching as several alien delegates shifted nervously in their specially designed seats, was that a species with humanity's history of constant warfare would naturally develop increasingly sophisticated methods of mutual destruction. We have been perfecting the art of war for thousands of years, not out of malice but out of necessity. In the audience, Ambassador Thylex of the Centauri Collective, a species known for their expansionist policies, found himself reconsidering several recent territorial acquisition plans that had included human-colonized worlds. Those expansion proposals had been quietly shelved after the Zephyrian fleet's destruction. Humans have an ancient saying, Hayes said, her words being simultaneously translated into 17 different languages. Si vis pacem, para bellum, if you want peace, prepare for war. For over half a century, ever since we first detected evidence of extrasolar intelligence, we have been preparing. And when war finally came to our doorstep uninvited, we were ready. The massive display shifted to show footage of the battle itself. The moment when humanity announced its arrival on the galactic stage with weapons that could rewrite the fundamental laws of physics. The destruction of the Zephyrian fleet played out in slow motion, each ship's annihilation a testament to what happened when any species made the mistake of underestimating human ingenuity. We extend the hand of friendship to all peaceful civilizations, Hayes concluded, her tone making it clear that this was both an offer and a carefully worded warning. Humanity seeks trade, cultural exchange, and mutual prosperity with all species willing to respect our sovereignty. But we also want to ensure that the fate of the Zephyrian hegemony serves as a permanent reminder to the galaxy. The assembly hall fell silent except for the soft hum of translation equipment. Then, slowly, deliberately, one by one, the alien delegates began to nod their agreement. Later, as the diplomatic envoys filed out to their respective ships, Ambassador Thylex approached Hayes with the careful deference reserved for dealing with apex predators. "Admiral," he said, his translator rendering his words with mathematical precision. "My government is intensely curious. Your matter conversion technology. How long has your species possessed such capabilities?" Hayes smiled with the cold satisfaction of someone holding cards that others couldn't even imagine. "We developed the first working prototype exactly 3 weeks before the Zephyrian fleet arrived in our system," she replied. "Sometimes, Ambassador, necessity truly is the mother of invention." Thylex's expression, as much as his crystalline features could convey, was one of profound respect mixed with existential terror. The Zephyrian survivors eventually settled on a distant world, their empire reduced to a single colony. They spent their days warning other species about the humans, not out of spite, but out of a genuine desire to prevent others from making the same fatal mistake. On Earth, humanity continued to prepare, because now they knew they weren't alone in the universe and they had learned that the galaxy could be a very dangerous place indeed. But they were ready for whatever came next. They were always ready.